Johannes Hartl, Dr. Johannes Hartl from Germany. And I want to introduce Johannes. So I know him personally, and I just love the guy. So Johannes actually has studied philosophy, and he has a PhD in systematic theology. How could that be? And he's a Catholic, so he's and the founder of a house of prayer in Augsburg, and they have a 24/7 running, and I believe it's 12 and a half years of uninterrupted prayer day night.
Praise the Lord.
And hallelujah. Thanks for that ongoing prayer. So Johannes is not only the founder and leader of that house of prayer in Augsburg, he's also a best-selling author, and he has ranked number 9 in the best-selling books in German-speaking Europe. His YouTube followers, he has about 12 million people that watch his YouTube content, and I would say he's one of the most influential Christian speakers in German-speaking Europe. And Johannes came from Germany to share, so we can open our hearts and listen to what he has to tell us from his experience. Thank you, Johannes. Over to you. Love you, brother.
Thank you so much. I love this guy too. We have a long history with each other. He's the guy reaching hundreds and thousands of Muslims in Germany, which is just beautiful. I was once at one of his meetings, sitting in a room of Pashtun women, all with their scarves, and watching the Jesus movie. This was like a surreal experience for me. So, just to give you a perspective, what I'm going to share about is I'm a little bit tired today because I just flew in. I had an early start because yesterday and the day before I was preaching in the most atheistic part of the world. Has anybody an idea where the most atheistic part of the world is? It's actually the eastern part of Germany. Actually, yesterday I was preaching at the same university where Martin Luther preached, in Wittenberg, and the day before that I was speaking in Magdeburg, which was the first city that officially became reformed. Now is the heartland of Reformation, is the least religious place on earth, which is a crazy thing. But I have a heart to reach people in absolutely non-Christian and post-Christian societies, and I'm going to speak about that. Most things that I'll share probably will not apply so much to Africa, to Asia, to Latin America. I'm speaking from a Western perspective, but I want to do two things. First of all, share a little bit of my experiences and stories, and the second part will be a little bit philosophical. I hope you bear with me. I want to try to make do an analysis on what post-Christianity is, what postmodernity is, and how we can reach those people with the gospel. All right? So, Andreas already shared that I'm part of a house of prayer. That's what the house of prayer looks like. It is in the southern part of Germany. It's not that big of a house. We have around 100 staff members, but the important thing is that the prayer never goes out. This is our prayer room here, and for 12 and a half years, by God's grace, we kept singing and worshiping and praying Jesus, adoring Jesus in Germany. And this is something different to do that in Germany than to do it in Mississippi or in Texas. It's just we do not have so many Christians, right? But it was actually started by a small group of young crazy people. It is Christians from all denominations. I myself happen to be Catholic, but both our staff members and our attendees, everybody, they're mixed. They're Protestants, they're charismatics, all over the body of Christ. And out of this small idea of praying day and night, actually a movement started. So we started to gather once a year people for a larger conference, which then grew to 3,000 people, which then eventually grew to 10,000 people. And we just had it on this January, so we have up to 12,000 people in our conferences, Christians from all denominations, and 60% of those people in this conference were there for the first time, 60%. So it has a big reach into a non-Christian sphere as well, and I'm going to share some of of the secrets behind that. I try to. But it all started actually in this little house of prayer. They are praying right now. And everything else was flowing out of it. We are very, very heavily using the internet as well. So we do have a YouTube channel. I share more about that later. But my topic tonight is not mainly the prayer movement. That would be a topic for another day, which is very important as well. But my topic tonight will be the gospel. The gospel should be the one thing that connects us all. But the gospel, especially in a post-Christian world. A post-Christian world, by definition, is not simply a not evangelized world, but it is a world that used to be Christian and no longer is Christian. So people would never say, I have never heard about Jesus, I've never heard about God. They have heard about Jesus and they don't care. So the first thing is, I want to destroy some of our maybe charismatics were so used to painting beautiful pictures that not necessarily reflect reality. And I want to destroy some of the myths. Maybe I'm going to make some of you people angry, but there is a sobering fact about the post-Christian West. The sobering fact is most people in Western Europe are not interested in Christianity at all. And that applies probably to the eastern coast of the US as well, Canada. It is not that people are running around, oh, I'm desperate to find Jesus, I want to hear about the gospel. Most people say, Christianity, this is where we came from as a culture, but we have evolved. So we are more open today. We are more tolerant than we used to be. And we have to look that fact in the eyes that most people are not absolutely interested to hear about the gospel. Now, don't you get me wrong. We definitely believe that Jesus is the answer, right? We believe that Jesus is the answer. Amen? All right, but now I have an important second part. Jesus is the answer. But what was the question? So, you can only speak about Jesus being the answer if you have understood the question. And every society, every culture, and every human being has questions, but they are not the same questions. Martin Luther, 500 years ago, he had the question, how can I get a merciful God, right? This was his driving question. Nobody cares for that question today at all, right? People do have questions, and we do believe that Jesus is the answer, but not necessarily to that question that we believe that people have. So, Jesus is the answer. What is the question for cities like this? What are the questions? What are the open doors? I'm fascinated by one story in the book of Acts. It is in chapter 17. You all know it. Paul preaches in Athens, and he goes to Mars Hill. And Mars Hill is like the religious and philosophical epicenter of the culture. So he approaches the place where the current ideas are thought through and discussed. He goes right there. And with what posture does he go there? He doesn't set up his little booth and say, Jesus is the answer. But he first engages in conversations. And then he perceives something in this culture, which is a certain temple. It is a temple, an altar for an unknown God. And Paul makes a connection between this open door in the culture and the gospel. I find that very interesting. So we read in Acts 17 that when Paul saw the city filled with idols, he was stirred up. In the same way, if you look at post-Christian culture, maybe you're stirred up, you're even angry. You say, like, how can Europe, how can the West forget about Christianity, right? But Paul doesn't approach the culture with the judgmental eyes, but he's looking for an open door. And the open door happens to be that one little altar for the unknown God. And Paul says, what you worship without knowing it, I'm here to proclaim it, who that God is. I love this posture. It's actually very humble and it's very dialogue-oriented. So, I want to speak about one philosophical idea of which I believe that it can be something like the unknown God of postmodernity, of post-Christian culture. And I want to speak about reality. I want to ask the question, what is reality? In the last years, I've watched several movies. Movies about, maybe it's better like this. Movies about starships and astronauts. Has anybody of you watched Gravity or Interstellar or The Martian or, all right. Yeah, all of them. Yeah, me too. So there is one scene in some of those movies, especially in Gravity, that really caught my attention. It is the scene where an astronaut has to operate or has to do something to fix something outside of the starship, and he or she loses contact to the starship. Have you seen scenes like that? So an astronaut starts to float out into space. And the feeling of floating out into space at first feels very enchanting, very positive, like I lose gravity, I'm free. There is nothing restraining me. I can fly. Not that gravity really anchoring me here, but I'm free to float around. Right? Isn't that beautiful to lose all the weight? But on the other side, if you think it through, the space is a very, very, very unfriendly place to be. An astronaut who flies out into space is doomed to die. And I believe that this picture of an astronaut losing contact with a starship is like a metaphor for our postmodern situation in contact or in connection with reality. Bear with me for 5 minutes of philosophy, all right? If we speak about reality, there used to be a version of reality of thinking about reality that used to be normal until, let's say, 200 years ago. Until 200 years ago, philosophers or ordinary people, they would think about reality like this. There is a reality, let's say, that consists of mountains and of houses and of elephants, right? And here is a human being, that's us, right? And we are somewhat connected to that reality, and we perceive this reality, right? So I see an elephant because there actually is an elephant, right? And of course, reality is not just elephants and mountains. Reality is also other people, right? For example, my parents. I'm not born into a vacuum, but I'm born already into a family. Therefore, my contact with reality also tells me something how to behave, right? I learned, for example, it's not a good idea to beat up my little sister because my little sister happens to cry if I beat her up, right? So this used to be a picture of reality in philosophy until 200 years. If we speak about truth, if we speak about the gospel, we have to understand that in postmodern times, in post-Christian times, to do best, you do you. You do you, that's best, right? What's the meaning of life? Well, you have to find it out for yourself, right? You have to find out what your true values are, right? Yeah, we had a member of the German government recently saying somebody's sex and gender can never be seen from anybody from the outside. That's something you have to find out for yourself, right? The idea is reality is on the inside. And the good life doesn't consist in adapting to an outer reality, for example, some dogmatic rules or some morals or whatever. But the good life is to live authentically from the inside out. Truth is on the inside. If you speak with young people, this is the cultural water they are swimming in. Maybe you have never thought about that, but the fish doesn't even think about water either. The fish doesn't feel itself wet, right? The fish is just in the water. And we are in this cultural water, we're submerged in that. So, at first, this feels liberating. But at the end of the day, it's totally confusing. So I give you four aspects of what I call the postmodern self. Like the person, the young person, the old person, who was already brought up in this view on reality, which of course is emphasized by social media as well, right? If I believe my identity, my reality, my values, it's all on the inside, of course the internet helps me to build upon this world, to shield me from the outer world. Yeah, on Facebook, on Instagram, I'm shielded from stuff I don't want to see. So, first of all, this postmodern self feels liberated. So we are no longer bound to the starship. So today, everybody can choose for herself, for himself. You can choose which 25,000 different studies you do in university. It's no joke, in Germany you can choose from 25,000 different studies that you can do on university. You have to find it out for yourself. You also have to find out for yourself what the meaning of life is. You also have to find out for yourself what's ethical and not. What do you think about sex? What do you think about abortion? Well, everybody has to find out for himself, right? That's what everybody says. So at first that feels liberating, but of course it's also overwhelming. You not only have to choose out of 25,000 studies, you also have to choose from 69 genders that Facebook offers. So it's not so easy. You have 69 genders. And you are 15 or 17, and you have to find it out for yourself. There is definitely a massive rise of anxiety and depression amongst young people, and there is a connection. Because there is a connection between introspection and depression. The more you think about yourself all day, the more you circle around yourself all day, the more depressed you become. So the postmodern self feels free and liberated, but also feels overwhelmed and depressed. And see, the problem is, if this postmodern self is confronted with a truth claim, let's say, hey, you don't live the way you're supposed to live because there is God and you need to be saved from your sin, this message hits an already totally overwhelmed situation, right? So that they wouldn't say, I'm not convinced that this is truth, but I feel like I'm already totally stressed out, right? We have, in the postmodern world, we have burnout cases of 19 years old, 20 years old. They have never worked their whole life. But they are burned out because there are too many choices, too many options. It's overwhelming, right? But if you start with speaking about truth in this situation, truth is even more overwhelming to them. They have to shield against, right? Or what we see, the whole cultural wars with the LGBTQ and all of that, you can see it from a moral perspective and say, wow, we are really going in a bad way as a society. But on the subjective level, we have a vulnerable self that tries to survive in a hostile world. So everybody's looking for a safe space, for a safe bubble. And here comes the Christians and doubt my identity. This is like an attack on myself, right? This is what it feels like. Because this postmodern self already is overwhelmed, already feels depressed. And of course, which is a big problem, this postmodern self is very, very easily manipulated. Because if your reality is in your feelings is the most easily manipulated thing about you, right? And if you are connected with the internet all day long, your emotions are, you're the perfect victim for manipulation. You're the perfect victim, you're the perfect customer. You're the perfect customer because you can be shaped and molded into every direction. I show you a picture that's somewhat funny. and somewhat fascinating. I know that you have already spoken about AI yesterday, I think. This was one of Germany's largest newspapers, and the headline goes like, "The End of Truth." Just take a look. So we have Pope Francis celebrating in a discotheque. We have Donald Trump in a jail. We have Greta Thunberg in a private jet. And we have Angela Merkel on the beach. Of course, all of those pictures are fake. They are AI generated. So we are easily manipulated. But postmodern self, I would say, also knows that, and people suffer from that. And this might be one of the open doors for the gospel. What I'm presenting you now, in my view, is the altar of the unknown God. It has to do with reality. Just a small remark on the culture. I do think the Western culture is on a decline. And there are some similarities to the fall of Rome. Rome was a very, very, very well-established empire with great structures, and they all fell apart around the year 400 AD. I think we cannot imagine what a chaotic situation, what a crisis it was. Rome had stood for around 1,000 years, much longer than any European society. So it's very interesting what happened when Rome fell. Europe looked like that. These are just different tribes that ran across Europe and burning stuff down. It was the Visigoths and the Huns and the Vandals and the Langobards, and it got like that. And the interesting thing is that the church survived all of that. And actually the church was able to contain culture, to preserve culture through those dark years. By doing what? By building monasteries. Monasteries were the answer for the crisis of that time. Yes, I do believe we need something like modern monasteries, but the monasteries, they had two aspects. First, they were houses of prayer, and the second, they were houses of education. They would educate people with thoughts that would persevere over the years, even in chaos. So I'm definitely not painting a dark picture here, but yes, I do believe the West is up to experience some shaky times. I do believe that. So in the dark times, the monasteries were able to answer a certain need. There were no structures and institutions left from the Roman Empire. The only structures that were established by the monasteries. Question: with the postmodern self, with that situation, what are needs? What are needs of the people? What are questions people actually have? I found three, or I wanna focus on three needs. The first one is, the situation is chaotic, and chaos is something that's very frightening to us. So if I work with young people, I see a big need and a big openness just simply for life orientation. I totally underestimated it, but half a year ago, I did a YouTube video. I did it mainly actually for our House of Prayer people. It was called The Power of a Focused Life. It was just a video on how you organize your life, how you organize your spiritual life. And this thing was watched by already almost 400,000 people, which within a rather short period of time. And I analyzed that. I analyzed, do Christians watch it? Do young people watch it? Male, female? And it is watched by non-Christians, it's watched by young male people. So there is a wish and a need for orientation. And not necessarily the big life questions like, is there a God? Is there a life after death? But actually how to get up in the morning, how to live a life, right? Normally they don't have fathers who are structured for themselves. They have fathers who are their best buddies, right? So they don't learn how to structuralize their lives. The second thing is there is a big need for emotional health. And this is a topic that the church has really neglected. The Catholic Church has overemphasized the battle against sin. I'm all for battling sin. And the Protestants have overemphasized the intellect. But discipleship has also to do with healing and transformation of your inner man, including your emotions. Some have lamented that we are living in a therapeutic society. Everybody goes to therapy, nobody goes to confession. Yeah, I understand that. But 50 years ago, nobody has spoken about emotional health. And some people of my age or older, the older age, we start to learn about that. But my parents' generation, they didn't have vocabulary for that at all. For a normal 18, 19, 20-year-old in Germany, it's totally normal that they have already had therapy for half a year. A huge percentage of people who apply in our house of prayer for our school, we have a school for discipleship, around 50 young people each year, a huge proportion of those already have mental problems. This has not doubled, but I think quadrupled over the last 4 years in the West. Just mental problems, depressions, anxieties. These are self-harm, addictions. These are the most things. So we have to address it, but the downside is, I cannot deepen that totally here, but you can only speak about emotional health if you yourself are emotionally well. Right? You cannot speak about emotional health if you yourself are only in your head and actually you're a cold person and a stressed person. And if your marriage is in ruins and you don't have contact with your kids, and sometimes we have built church like a company or like a university, and you cannot do that. You cannot do that with this generation. Because what social media and YouTube does is, it emphasizes the personality. If I read a book, I don't feel the person, mostly. Normally, I just get the content. But right now, people don't read books anymore. People watch YouTube videos and Instagram reels, and it's the personality that speaks to them. This is the main message to learn for anything about marketing. The best marketing is no marketing at all. The best marketing is real people. But it's very difficult to produce real people. If I think about the Catholic Church like in Germany, who is able to stand in front of a camera and to share about his or her faith in a way that's actually attractive, it's not that easy. It's not hundreds of them. And we have created an educational system where we learn about exegesis and systematic theology, which is all good, by the way, but we never speak about emotional health. It's just a very sad remark, but I just want to make it. I've worked a lot with German bishops, or with bishops and church leaders at all, and there is one guy in Germany who used to be a private secretary and a driver for one of the German bishops. And after working for him for 10 years, he left the church and declared himself an atheist. And he was asked by the press why, and he said, because I saw how my bishop lives. And he was not, it's not like he was not a rude person, he was not an immoral person, but there was no vibrant spiritual life, there was no emotional connection, there was no warmth at all. And I've been to some of those church meetings. They are like politicians' meetings, they are like a bank meetings, I mean like that. But this young generation is an emotive and feeling generation. It has a downside. Yeah, this overemphasis on feelings is not just positive, but it is the way it is. It is a feeling. In Germany, we have the word "I don't feel it." I don't know if you have it in English as well. But it's like, I had a YouTube video it started with something secular, and at the end I spoke about God, and a young guy commented, he wrote in the comment section, I like the first part of the talk, but I don't feel religion. Religion is something I don't feel, right? This is the idea. The idea is if I don't feel it, then it's not real, right? And there is a partial truth in it, because people were not just drawn to Jesus due to his words, but there was a power that healed everybody. People were able to feel that there is something different. And I have to question, do people see us Christians in our relationships living together and come to the conclusion, you are different? And they are very open to the topic of emotional health. They're not so much interested in truth, but they're very much interested in how to overcome stress, how to overcome your anxiety. The last days, the 2 days where I spoke in the most atheistic part of Germany, I was speaking with pastors and I asked them, are people open for religious questions? And they said, most people are not, but those who are, they become open during therapy. So sooner or later, their marriage falls apart, or their relationship falls apart, or they have a burnout, they have a depression, and then they start to ask questions. And we are in a mental health crisis in the West, and I believe that this is one of the possible open doors to reach people. Because if you think, yeah, I've spoken long enough about it, but I have a passion about the topic. The third point might be new for you, but one of the open doors is, I said that people in this concept of reality are easily manipulated, right? But everybody hates being manipulated. And there is a growing number of people in the West who feel like we are lied to all the time. So I believe one of the big chances, of the big possible opportunities for Christianity is countercultural ideas. There are many people who desperately hunger for something else. And these are the same people who are probably also open for conspiracy theories, but they are also open to just hear a totally different story. I don't want to polemize too much on that, but I still want to show you some pictures from our liberal post-Christian West. This is a street in London during Pride Month. So we don't even have just Christopher Street Day, but now we have Pride Month. So I'm from Germany, and I remember the last time we had so many flags in our streets. That was not the best time Germany had. So there are many, I'm not even saying about anything pro or against LGBTQ, but the more you push people in one direction, the greater the resistance is also, and people will say, come on, I don't believe all of that. I show you something more. This is the logo of basically all the important companies of the world during Pride Month. So without being open to conspiracy theories, you could come to the conclusion that this might be a manipulation. And there is resistance, like in Germany, not necessarily to the LGBTQ thing that is very broadly accepted, but other things. So there are always people questioning. But see, don't get me wrong, the masses always go with the flow, right? But there is also a minority of people who actually question things, who actually want to think. And I perceive that in the West, that left-wing mainstream is maybe about to start to crumble down. If you see the intellectuals in the West try to be much more open to conservative thinking than they used to be 10 years ago. And this is not all good. It's the same in the US. It's not all good. Christians are neither conservative nor liberal, but it opens up doors. Just one example for that tendency is that gentleman whom probably all of you know, Jordan Peterson. If you don't know him, I'm not saying that he's preaching the gospel, because he isn't. He's not a Christian and he's not preaching the gospel, but he speaks about the Bible and he attracts millions. I was in Berlin, one of the most, if not the most, atheistic city in the world. And I was at his meeting. It was a packed out, large convenience center with 4,000 people. I think the ticket was 60 euro. It was fully booked. It was mainly young men. They were non-Christians, and Peterson would speak for 2 hours about Christian values, about why it's good to wait with sex until marriage, like the most conservative things. Catholics wouldn't dare to speak. He would actually even he would actually say, "What's the problem with the anti-baby pill?" It's like back then when Pope Paul VI said it, everybody laughed at him. Now, 50 years later, people pay 60 euro to watch a guy speak about this. So it shows that there is I believe, a growing number of people who surf the internet and they want something different. They do not want to hear the same stuff anymore. So, if my analysis is true, if this is the cultural moment we find ourselves in, I have 7 propositions or 7 claims that I believe should be characteristics of our engagement in missional activities in this cultural situation. They are a little bit mixed, and we can discuss them later, but 7 things how we can reach people in this cultural situation. First of all, we have to train precise, non-religious language. Precise, non-religious language. If I train young people, I make them explain to me what sin is within 60 seconds without using any Christian word. We should train our speakers like that. Right? I don't understand why that is, but I've seen it all over. I sit together with a priest or I sit together with a preacher, and we speak about, oh, I like to have a glass of beer. Yeah, have you seen the football match yesterday? Yeah, have another piece of pizza. He's a normal guy, right? Then he steps on the pulpit and he starts to speak, aren't we all people, pilgrims in these days, walking abroad? It's like, is something wrong with you? It's like, why did you stop communicating with real people, right? Actually, preaching is communication with real people, so you have to speak how real people actually speak. And I added precise because the internet made us much less patient with imprecisions. What does it mean? If I want to find out something about the history of Krakow, it takes me exactly 1 minute. I'm on Wikipedia and I have it right there. If you say, oh, the history of Krakow, yeah, I have to start with the Slavonian empires back then and Alexander the Great, and you've lost me already. The problem is, in YouTube, you have exactly 1.5 seconds to catch the attention, or 2 seconds. In TikTok, you have far less. On TikTok, you have less than 1 second. Within 1 second, they decide if they're going to watch the video or not. On YouTube, maybe in 2 seconds. So you have to come to the point. And we have to train that. And you can train that. Actually, I have learned so much through Instagram and YouTube to communicate well. I give an example. I wanted to speak about freedom and how Jesus sets us free. Isn't that a good topic? Yeah, it's a great topic. How does a topic on YouTube sound like if the title of the video is Jesus Sets You Free? Is that good or not good? Not good, right. How should I start my talk on that topic? Should I talk about, let's read Romans 3. Yeah, it's not a good idea. So I sat together with my team, and we thought about a title that would catch the attention of YouTube viewers. So we thought it through. Well, liberty, being free. Everybody wants to be free. So what would be the problem? So if Jesus sets you free is the answer, what is the problem? What is the question? Well, the question is, I'm not free. Okay, what is the situation? What does the situation feel like of not being free? And we came across the term, where you feel manipulated. Everybody hates manipulation, be it manipulation in a relationship, manipulation media. So we called that video 7 Signs You're Being Manipulated. And this thing was watched by 500,000 people in a short amount of time. Because actually I started with 7 signs that shows that you're manipulated. I started with manipulation in relationships. Then I said, but it can also be that you yourself manipulate yourself. There is bad habits in your life that manipulate you. And I was actually at the end even speaking about demons and Satan, manipulate and sin. So it was a very clear gospel message, but just packed in a precise, non-religious language. Because everybody understands manipulation. Nobody wants to be manipulated. So, second thing, I think we have to boldly challenge the culture. Tim Keller wrote excellent books about that. He was a pastor, he recently passed away, he was a pastor in New York, and he said, the gospel always challenges our idols. And every culture and every individual soul has his or her idols. And I believe we are not supposed to adapt to culture only, but actually challenge culture. But here comes a problem. Most Christians have no experience in the realm of philosophy. So I don't want to make you study philosophy, that's not the point, but philosophy is the common language amongst human beings if they speak about the big questions of life. And I'm not talking about apologetics, how to smash the atheists. Can help sometimes, nothing against that, but I believe that if we train young people, we should train them to think. Because in a post-Christian world, people are very sensitive to dishonest thought processes. Like they feel manipulated, but actually, if you think with them, if you start with a simple question of life, and you think it through with them, and you clearly point to a solution, people will follow you. And I can't stand it, this Christian proclamation that I see also on the internet. It starts with something like, yeah, aren't we all depressed sometimes? But good news, the Bible says God is our refuge. Yeah, that might work in the US, maybe that works in Texas, or used to work. It doesn't even work anymore. But it's like the Bible itself doesn't have credibility in Europe. I'm sorry to say that. You can't make a point with the Bible says. Yeah, who cares what the Bible says? The Quran says something else. So you have to build up credibility for your claims, and I think we need philosophy for that. We need to challenge the current culture and the current philosophy with things like that, for example. I do that all the time. People react oftentimes positively. So fourth point, we need a warm and welcoming atmosphere. I think this is a point where I don't have to persuade you so much, but we are... Let's put it differently. Oh, sure. Thank you. I've written a book 3, and you know what? Oftentimes they're more friendly than the Christians. And they're actually more open. Now, they are confused, sometimes, and they believe crazy things, but oftentimes they are much warmer people. And if you've been in circles like that and you come back to a church meeting, sometimes you feel it's really cold. It's cold. We have to build a warm and welcoming atmosphere where normal people actually feel well and don't feel like a customer. Not like we have a greeting service at the entrance, and here is a contact card. Yeah, you can fill it out and we stay in contact. No, a warm, welcoming atmosphere means actually loving without second thoughts. I mean, this is actually what love is. Love is accepting somebody with second thoughts, without second thoughts. This means I'm friendly to you even if you never come back. That's a warm, welcoming atmosphere. And post-Christians, they are very sensitive to that point. Like, for example, yesterday and the day before yesterday, it was a secular meeting in the heart of the city in a conference center, and I spoke about the future of our culture. That was the topic. And Pippa just asked me if at the end of it, there was like an altar call or like an invitation to accept Jesus. And the answer is no, there is not. But at the end of it, I give a hint what the Christian answer to that would be. And then there is a very peaceful musical piece, and that's it. And I trust the people to make their own conclusions. And if they want to Google me, they find my YouTube videos easily, and they have the full gospel there. But we have to create an atmosphere and spaces where people feel that it's not clickbait, right? They are not the prey. They are not the prey of our missionary goals. They are actually real people that want to be talked to and invited. Full stop. A warm, welcoming atmosphere. Authentic emotional health. I spoke a lot about that before. You can only build an emotional healthy church if you yourself go your way of healing. And there is no person in this room who's not hurt. There's no person in this room who's emotionally absolutely well. There is no person in the room whose marriage is just wonderful. Whose parent relationship is just isn't. The only question is, are you able and willing to look at these things and to work with these things? There are no perfect people in the kingdom of God. And the church in the West really suffers from the abuse crisis. And the abuse crisis simply tells us that broken people are broken people, right? Broken people are broken people. But the scandal is that we are so surprised. Because we all have our dark secrets, we all have our emotional wounds, and that's actually not a problem. Jesus, after the resurrection, still had his wounds. And he showed his wounds to Thomas and actually invited Thomas to touch his wounds. So if you have your emotional wounds, but you bring them to Jesus and you walk with Jesus through them, your wounds become a point of entry, right? A wound is the most direct path to the heart because it's connected to the bloodstream. Perfect people are terrible. Perfect people are terrible. I mean, it's like once you've reached all your ideals, you become an unbearable person. I mean, we have to establish a reconciled, peaceful situation with our imperfections, without saying sin is not a problem. Well, sin is a problem, right? But we are all hurt and broken people, and creating spaces where people actually feel safe to be hurt and broken. I think it was Jesus, wasn't he, speaking like it's not the healthy people who need a doctor, right? Jesus came for those who are hurting. Okay, enough of that. Next point. Nobody likes religion in the West, but some people do like spirituality. Not all do. Many people are disinterested in spirituality also. But we have to create moments to experience the sacred, experiencing the holy. Every human being has antennas, has a capacity to experience the holy, experience the sacred. And again, my Buddhist and yoga-oriented friends, they are much more spiritual than most Christians are. Like, I know one friend of mine, she's a practitioner of yoga. It's totally normal for a yoga person to do 2 hours of yoga a day. It's not a lot. Archbishop can prove because he has this background, right? So nobody knows that, but he used to be a yogi. So To a Christian who prays 2 hours a day, that sounds like a fanatic. Christians don't pray 2 hours a day. Or if they do, they actually don't pray, but they read the Bible and prepare the next sermon and they call it prayer. Yeah? But actually, the way the Buddhists do it, like really sitting down and meditating like 2 hours straight, I don't know many Christians who do that. So I believe we can only experiencing the sacred if we make room for the sacred one, for the Holy One. I come back to that point at the end. But it's crucial because people feel the difference. And you have to ask yourself the question, again, coming back to my esoteric friends, they don't have much in their head, they're not so intelligent, but they have the sensations. Oh, I sense the karma, I sense the chi, I sense the energy. And you have to ask yourself, are we actually spiritual people? And are our leaders, or we as leaders, are we spiritual people, or are we business people? Or are we teachers only intellectuals? And only spirit will attract spirit. So we need to experience the sacred and let others experience the sacredness of God. Of course, the sixth point, I think I don't have to convince you there, we have to focus on the non-believers. It's so funny, but most Christians don't. Most Christians focus on the believers. Most Christians focus on the believers. I find it so funny. Imagine a fisherman. A fisherman throwing out a worm as a bait, right? Question. Does the fisherman like to eat the worm? No. The worm, the bait, is meant to attract the fish. Right? The fisherman, maybe he likes to eat sausage, but if the fish doesn't like sausage, he shouldn't choose sausage for a bait, right? The bait needs to attract the fish. Christians don't think like that at all. Because 6 months after their conversion, they don't have non-Christian friends anymore. They only listen to Christian music, they only read Christian books, and they are in their Christian bubble. And we have to break it up to make people think about those 99% who do not come. It's so funny, Jesus spoke about leaving the 99 to search the one. I think now the church should leave the one to find the 99. Because 99% are not coming. And the question is, how can you attract the non-believers? I give an example. In almost every nation on the earth, except for the Muslim nations, Christmas is celebrated. Christmas is celebrated in Buddhist countries. Christmas is celebrated in in post-Christian Germany. Everybody likes Christmas. So friends of mine from a free church in Karlsruhe in Germany, they thought about a Christmas event, but nobody wants a Christmas event, so they did a musical. And they did a Christmas musical, very, very, very high professional. They did it for many years. I was there this year. It was like every Broadway show you can imagine, perfectly done. They charged €5 entrance, so very cheap. They attracted 70,000 people in 8 shows or 9 shows. And it was very low-key. It was really fun and party and Christmas party. And at the end, they would sing one Christmas song and share a little bit about that. It was actually very deep. And at the end of that, all the churches of the city, the Catholic, the Protestant, all of them lined up, the representative of the churches, and said, we invite you to come to one of our Christmas services. Here is a list of our Christmas services. It was in the mid of December. 70,000 people in a city of 200,000. So every third. So there are massive, massive possibilities, but you have to think from the customer perspective. And if I'm not a Christian, but I think, oh, well, it's December now, it's Christmas is coming, I might go to that musical. Why not? Go to a musical. It's 1.5 hours. It's a nice show. There's popcorn. It's €5 only. I could do that. But we have to learn. We have to train people to think from the focus of the non-believers. Last point, friends, we need a posture of learning and humility. We need a posture of learning and humility. Because I think the missionaries, when they first came to certain nations, they knew they brought something better than the culture had, so they were very bold, and I can understand that. But if you speak in a post-Christian nation, the people assume that they already know what you try to sell them, and they don't want it. So you cannot come with a with a prideful posture. Humility opens many doors, and humility can be seen in very, very little remarks. Why not? Why not fitting in little remarks in your preaching? Stuff like, that's just now my perspective. You can judge for yourself, right? I'm not all-knowing. I invite you to think about that. Think it through, right? But also a posture of humility and learning is to communicate in a way that people actually understand. I learn a lot, for example, on Instagram. If you study how people communicate on Instagram and come up with my own ideas, and then I get feedback there, I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but that's another thing. Basically, we have to come from a perspective of real dialogue. Dialogue doesn't mean that I don't have an opinion, because I sure have, but I'm open for that opinion to be discussed. So, full stop. These are my 7 points on how to address that culture. I want to finish just with some, hopefully, encouraging examples, or just from my life experiences, things that I have been involved with, things that I do. When Paul went to Mars Hill, he went there because this was the place where ideas were discussed. What is today's Mars Hill? I believe today's Mars Hill is YouTube. This is my English. I have an English and a German. Oh no, this is a German YouTube channel. I just reached 100,000 followers, which is for spoken contact in Germany. It's rather much. And I had 12 million views. It was not 12 million individuals, 12 million views over the last years. And how I use it. So the title there is Breakout, Come Home, Ausbrechen ankommen. And I post one video every second week or something like that. And some of those videos are like, this is Israel and Gaza, like current events. That was watched 600,000 times. It's pretty good. But there was one on gender. But this one, for example, is how to find a good partner for you, right? This is very, very low key. But this is how does prayer work? This is the power of a focused life. So this is, in case you don't speak German, which of course is a shame, you can check out my English channel, Dr. Johannes Hartl, Break Free. Come Home is much smaller. I found what YouTube and Instagram does. Back in the day, when we did street evangelization, we went to the inner cities in the hope that somebody gets our flyer, or we speak somebody. The algorithm does a much better job than every street evangelist on the earth. Why? If you treat the algorithm well, he distributes your stuff on everybody's phone. This is crazy. This is better than the Jehovah's Witnesses who ring on every door. The algorithm, if I play it well, YouTube says this content needs to be seen by millions of others. Literally millions. It suggests my contents to millions of people, and most of them, of course, are not Christians. So we have to use the internet. We have to study the internet. We have to communicate the internet. And most churches, most Christians are not really doing a great job yet. There's some improvements, but way to go. Way to go. YouTube is the place where ideas are discussed. So, second story. I think there is a big key in unity. The big key in unity. Some years ago, some friends of mine and we wrote something, we called it the Mission Manifest. English would be the Missions Manifesto. And it is a 10-point pamphlet, 10 theses for the Catholic Church to come back to the centrality of missions. And we did it together with around 100 Catholic groups in Germany. So it was religious orders, institutes, it was charismatic groups, all of them. And actually, the book that we wrote about that became a national bestseller. And if I could, I would love to show you a picture. Of the event, because I believe, this was one of our conferences where we started it, and there you see all the different organizations who got behind it. There is always power in unity. If we come together, this was the attempt to say, what if the church in Germany as a whole would come together to say, we put missions first. Now, the sad story of it that German's Bishop Conference, they have a different priority list, but basically it was well received on the grassroots level. And it's still going. So this is the book, and this is Spiegel bestseller. This means a national bestseller. And actually, we had a chance to present it to the Holy Father, who of course was very enthusiastic. I mean, he loves things like that. Just a second story. A third story. If you have built unity, you can easily draw from this pool of unity in a moment of crisis. So when COVID hit 4 years ago, some friends of mine, actually it was a WhatsApp group, we started an organization called Deutschland betet gemeinsam. This means Germany prays together. It was very small first, but within 48 hours, we had people from all across Germany calling us they want to be part of it, including one of our prime ministers. Germany is very secular, but in a moment of crisis, it was very easy to rally them because we were speaking in unity. So we had the Orthodox with us. We had I would love to show you a picture if I could. We web streamed from a large monastery. We had worship going on. We had basically all the churches in Germany connected with that. And we believe, or it's a very solid estimation, we believe that around 1 million people participated in that. In a very secular nation, and I'll show you something. This one, okay. But I did a mistake. I have to figure it. Okay. So this is Germany's largest newspaper, Bild. This is the first page. And it says, he wants whole of Germany to pray against Corona. So this is one of the largest German news outlet. It's called Focus Online. They asked me, this is the live stream of our prayer event. And they asked me if they can put it on their main page, a newspaper. And actually they owned it. They said it is an action of focus. So they asked if they themselves can be contributors. And this in the back, I did it wrongly, but this we put in a song online for that event, and it became number 5 of YouTube trends. YouTube trends means YouTube suggests it to every viewer. We had 4 million views of that song only, and we were number 9 in Google search results on that same day. So this is what penetration into secular culture looks like if you have a moment of crisis and you stand in unity. So we were able to reach 1 million people, at least to a certain extent, to influence them. Now it's a time to pray in this crisis of Corona. One last thing that I'm doing that has to do with reaching the culture, and then I'm finishing. 3 years ago, now after the House of Prayer is very well established, I had it on my heart to start something new. And I started a movement called Eden Culture, because I saw everybody in the West speaks about ecology, but nobody speaks about the ecology of the human heart. I mean, Pope Benedict XVI did, but I decided to write a book about that. What does the human heart, which is an endangered species too, what does a human heart and what does a society need to stay human? And this book became number 9 of all German best-selling books in the secular market. And out of that, we started a movement which is actually very secular, but it brings together the arts, philosophy, research, psychology, all on the topic of what does it mean to be a human. And beauty is very important for us. Celebration is very important for us. A warm, welcoming atmosphere. Sometimes there's also good food. Sometimes there's also whiskey and cigars. I don't know if that's okay with your theology. But if not, you can focus on the right. We also have flowers. This, for example, this is a young professor who researches AI and all of that. And this is a young guy who created the first social, whatever. He made something like an iPhone but better. So he's an inventor. So we have fashion companies. So this is a fashion event in Munich that we did, and actually it's in the city center, very secular place, and we bring together fashion designers and models who are actually Christians and share about beauty and what all of this has to do with God. And I could go on and on about that topic, but I believe, I mean this is just how to say, this is not missional yet. It's like preparing the way, because Christians for the last 200 years, we have went out of the institutions and of culture shaping, and now we stand at the by side and we complain that the culture is going in the wrong way. So we want to turn it around and make Christians enter the spheres of culture shaping. So our slogan is future with a human face, because what we face in the West is a very inhuman nature, right? Technology driven, and many people have a desire for a future with a human face. So therefore we created that small movement. So concluding, the gospel in a post-Christian world, I think we have to change our approach to missions in some regards in this current moment. But there is a lot of opportunity, a lot of positive things to be found out. And of course, everything I'm sharing started in this prayer room. So even if I do believe in culture change and in YouTube and all of that, my own personal story never started with YouTube and large conferences, but with prayer. So my last sentence will be, all fruitfulness in the kingdom of God only flows from prayer. Thank you so much.